The storm took my ship 4 hours after midnight. I remember the sound of it, not the thunder, not the sea's roar, but the silence between my first mate's last shout and the water closing over the deck. That silence was the loudest thing I had ever heard in 40 years of ruling the Graven Reach, and in it I understood, with the calm that comes only to men who have accepted they are about to die, that the ocean did not care who I was. I did not call for my wolf. There was no point. He had been quiet for 3 years, not gone, but folded away, like a letter a man carries in his chest but cannot bring himself to open. I had stopped asking why. I had stopped asking anything. The current took me east. I held to a broken spar and let it. At some point in the dark hours, something solid struck my shoulder. Rock, I thought, and then I thought nothing at all. I woke to pain and the smell of salt grass. The light was early gray, the kind that comes before the sun commits to the day. I was lying on my back on a narrow beach of black sand, and the tide line was close enough that I could hear the individual waves pull back across the stone. My left side was wrong. 2 ribs at least, maybe 3. My shoulder had been pulled and was now announcing itself with every breath. There was something wet and crusted above my left ear that I did not reach up to investigate. I tried to sit up. The world rolled sideways, and I decided the ground was more honest than I was. I had been to Ashkeep Island once, 12 years ago, on a boundary survey. I remembered it the way you remember a place that wished you ill, the dense inland forest, the rock spires along the southern edge, the old sailor's story about what lived in the pools below those spires. I remembered thinking at the time that a wise man would not shipwreck here. I had apparently become less wise. I heard footsteps on the sand, light and quick, the kind that belong to someone who has learned not to announce themselves in a place that listens. I turned my head toward the sound and the world rolled again. A woman crouched down beside me. She was perhaps 30, with dark hair pulled back simply and sand already on her forearms. She was looking at my side with the particular focus of someone making a list. "You have 2 broken ribs," she said. Her voice was level. "Possibly 3. I won't know the 3rd until I press along the lower arc, and I'd rather not do that on the beach in full light. Can you tell me your name?" "Kale," I said. I did not say the rest of it. I had no idea yet what this island held, who might be listening, who this woman was, and a king's name on an uninhabited island is not always a safe thing to hand out. She accepted the single name without comment. "Senna," she said, in the same tone, one name, no more asked. "I need to move you before the tide comes back. There's a sheltered place about 40 feet up the beach into the tree line. I've cleared it already. It's going to hurt. I've been hurt before." "Yes," she said, looking at the side of my head. "I can see that." She stood and offered me her hand, and after a moment I took it. She was not wrong about the 40 feet. She was not wrong about the hurting either. But she had a particular way of steadying, not holding me up, not taking my weight, but standing in exactly the right place so that if I went sideways, she was there. It was a practiced skill, the kind healers develop after years of moving people who do not want to be moved. By the time she lowered me onto a pile of folded sailcloth she had already laid out in the shelter of a rock overhang, I was sweating, and my vision was doing something I did not appreciate. She produced a water skin from a pack near the rock wall and held it to my mouth. "Drink slowly. Your body is still in storm shock. Drinking too fast will bring it back up." I drank slowly. She knelt beside me and began examining my ribs with careful, unhurried hands. I have been tended by pack healers my entire life, men and women trained from childhood in the wolf pack tradition of mending broken bodies. They were competent, professional. They treated me the way you treat a king, quickly and correctly, and with a layer of careful distance between the healer and the man. Senna's hands were different. They were not less skilled. She found the 3rd broken rib before I had decided there was a 3rd, but the way she worked was without any layer at all. She pressed and listened. She felt the breath move wrong and adjusted what she was doing. When I made a sound I had not meant to make, she said, "I know, I'm sorry. I need 30 more seconds," and then gave me exactly 30 more seconds and stopped. No healer had ever apologized to me before. 3 ribs, she confirmed, sitting back. 2 clean breaks, 1 partial. The shoulder has been pulled but not dislocated. It's going to be useless for 4 or 5 days. You hit your head, which you already know. Tell me when you last lost consciousness. I don't know, the water. So possibly several hours. She opened a small leather case near the pack. Inside I could see glass vials, folded cloth, a pair of bone needles. A healer's travel kit, well organized, well used. I'm going to clean the head wound now. It's going to sting. You keep warning me. Would you prefer I didn't? I thought about it. No, keep warning me. She almost smiled. Not quite, a movement at the corner of her mouth that did not quite reach the rest of her face, the way expressions move on people who have learned to keep most of themselves back. I recognized it. I wore something similar. The wound above my ear stung precisely as promised. I was not a useful patient for the first 2 days. The head wound was worse than I had allowed myself to assess, and Senna, who had apparently assessed it correctly the first morning, rationed me the knowledge of that slowly. On the second evening, when I was less likely to try to stand up and do something about it, she told me that I had a significant impact injury, and that my body was going to insist on sleep for the next 48 hours regardless of what I decided. I am a king, I told her. I was not sure why I told her. I had not meant to. She was quiet for a moment, pressing a clean cloth to the wound with steady hands. I know, she said. I looked at her. You said one name on the beach, she said. But you speak like a man who gives orders and expects them to be obeyed, and you have the bearing of someone who has never once stood in a room and wondered where to put himself. I've worked in enough pack halls to recognize it. She did not sound either impressed or afraid. She sounded the way she said everything, precise and level, as if she were reporting the weather. It doesn't change what I can do for your ribs. Who are you? I asked. Healer Senna, but who are you? The expression moved at the corner of her mouth again. I'm from Wason Settlement, the coastal pack on the eastern reach. I was traveling to tend an elder on one of the outer islets. My vessel went down in the same storm as yours, I think. I washed up on the south beach the evening before I found you. She settled back. I've been here 2 days. I found water. There's a spring inland about a quarter mile, and I've been marking the terrain. The island isn't large. It's manageable if you're careful about the southern rock pools. The pools, I said. Yes, her voice did not change. I've seen what's in them. We stay to the northern 2/3 of the island. Something about how she said it, not dramatic, not frightened, just clear and practical, made my wolf, deep inside his folded-away quiet, lift his head. I had not felt him do that in 3 years. I said nothing about it. I let Senna press the cloth to my head and I slept. The 4th morning I was well enough to be useful, and I told her so. She looked at me with the measuring look I had come to recognize, a quick, thorough catalogue that she kept behind her eyes and did not share the conclusions of, and said, You can walk carefully. Don't carry anything heavier than the waterskin for 2 more days. The ribs are doing exactly what they should if you don't put strain on them. And if I do, then one of the broken ends finds something it shouldn't, and we have a much more serious problem. I walked carefully. She had done a great deal in 4 days. The shelter at the rock overhang had been extended with fallen timber, methodically, not quickly, chosen pieces that fit together without needing to be forced. She had mapped the fresh water spring and marked a path to it that avoided the thicker undergrowth. She had found a place on the northern headland where a signal fire could be seen from the shipping lane, if we could get a ship to look. What do the packs know about Ashkeep? She asked, as we walked the path to the spring. That it's uninhabited. That the pilots avoid it because of the rock shelf on the western approach. It takes ships the way the storm took mine. I paused. My ribs were adjusting to the walk with quiet protest. My first mate knew where we were when the ship broke up. He would have sent word if he survived. How long would rescue take? 4 days to reach Graven's Harbor if he made landfall, another 2 to organize a search, then they have to find us. I looked at the trees. A week, perhaps 10 days. Senna absorbed this without visible reaction. Then we have enough time to be found if we're careful. She held a branch aside for me to pass. We eat well here. The island has game. I set 4 snares last night. You set snares? I grew up in the coastal pack. You learn to feed yourself or you learn to go hungry. A pause. There wasn't much of a middle choice in Waysend. I wanted to ask more. Something about the way she said it, not bitterly, but with the compressed quality of someone who has spent a long time deciding which things are worth the breath they'd take to say, made me hold the question. She would say it when she wanted to say it. I had the feeling that pushing at Senna Ray was like pushing at the rock we sheltered under. She would not move, and you would only hurt your hands. On the 5th day, I found her at the beach. Not our beach, the southern edge of the island's western curve, where the black sand gave way to a long stretch of broken rock. She was crouched at the water line. As I came closer, I saw what she was crouching over. A wolf. A large gray male lying on his side in the surf. He was alive, barely. One foreleg was badly torn, and there was a deep gash across his flank that had already crusted over with salt and sand. He was not one of ours, not from any pack I recognized by coloring. A lone wolf, then, from somewhere north of the Reach's territory, riding the storm the wrong way. He would have died there in another hour. The tide was coming back. Senna had her hands on him already. Not moving him yet, just resting her hands along his side, the way you do with a frightened animal, so that they feel the warmth before they feel the motion. Her eyes were closed. Her mouth was moving slightly, the way some healers move their lips when they are counting breath. The wolf was watching her. A lone wild wolf, too injured to fight, too frightened not to, and he was watching her the way prey animals watch something that has decided, against all precedent, not to hurt them. Not relaxed, not trusting, but watching, waiting to see. She opened her eyes and looked at me over her shoulder. I need you to help me move him, she said. He can't bear weight on the foreleg. If we get him above the tide line and I have light to work with, I can close the flank wound. The leg needs to be cleaned and bound. He's a wild wolf, I said. He could take your arm off. He could, she agreed. He won't. She looked back at the wolf. Will you? She said quietly to the animal. The wolf's ears moved. We moved him. Senna was right. He did not take her arm off. He made a sound once when we lifted him, a low guttered thing that was as much exhaustion as pain, and then he went still and let her hands work. I held him along his back, keeping the pressure even, while she cleaned the foreleg wound with water from our skins and bound it with cloth she had been saving in the healer's case. She worked for almost 2 hours. When she was done, the wolf was sleeping, really sleeping, the even breath of an animal no longer in immediate danger, and she sat back on her heels in the late afternoon light and looked at her own hands for a long moment. You do this often, I said. When I find them. She began cleaning her hands with the remaining water. Waysend isn't far from the wild runs. Injured wolves come in sometimes, ones who don't belong to any pack, who have no healer to go to. I keep a corner of my workroom for them. Your pack council knows you do this. The corner of the mouth movement, this time without warmth. My pack council thinks I'm too soft for serious healer work. They send me to the outlying settlements and the elders. Comfortable work, safe work. She looked at the sleeping wolf. They're not wrong that I'm soft about some things. My wolf stirred again. This time he did not just lift his head. He turned toward her inside me, the way a compass needle swings and then holds. I said nothing. I did not understand what it meant yet. I only knew that I had not felt him move like that in 3 years, and the last time he had moved like that, the time before the silence, had been in the presence of a woman who turned out to be the wrong one. I did not trust the feeling. I had stopped trusting that feeling. But I watched her hands in the last of the afternoon light, careful and precise, and without any layer between herself and the work, and I thought, there is something here I do not have the right words for yet. 7 days on Ashkeep Island. The gray wolf recovered faster than I had expected. On the morning of the 6th day he was sitting up, watching Senna bring him fish from the shallows with the focused patience of an animal who has decided that patience is the correct response to this particular human. By the 7th day he was standing, favoring the foreleg but bearing weight. He did not leave. He stayed near the shelter, a little apart, occupying the space of something that has not decided yet but has decided not to decide yet. I understood him completely. I was better. The ribs were still unhappy, but they were no longer actively alarming, and the shoulder had come back to roughly 40% of its usefulness, which Senna told me was ahead of schedule. The head wound had closed cleanly. She checked it every morning, quick and thorough, the same way she checked everything, and every morning she reported that it was behaving correctly. We had fallen into the rhythms of the island without discussing it. She handled the water and the snares. I handled the fire and the signal watches. We split the cooking. She was a worse cook than I was, which she acknowledged without embarrassment, so I cooked more than she did. I was a worse navigator of the interior forest than she was, which I acknowledged in the same way, so she led and I followed. We talked in the evenings by the fire, not endlessly, not the way people talk when they are filling silence. We both knew silence and were comfortable in it. But she would say something, or I would, and then we would follow it where it went. I learned. Waysand had 40 wolves and was governed by an elder council that believed in practical efficiency above most other things. Her mother had been the settlement healer before her, and her mother before that. Senna had been trained from age 6. She was 31. She had never been to Graven's main hall, though she had heard it described. She did not think it sounded like a place she would belong. She learned. I had ruled since I was 23. I had never found my fated mate, not for want of looking, which I had given up saying was not the right word for it, and in any case was true. My wolf had been quiet for 3 years. I told her this the way you tell things to someone on an island with no one else within 50 miles, because there is no reason not to. 3 years, she said. Yes. Did something happen 3 years ago? I thought about it. A woman, I said, a wrong reading. My wolf reached toward her and I followed it, and I was wrong. It was not the bond. I had misread something, or he had, or the longing had become a thing of its own and I had confused it for what I was looking for. I looked at the fire. After that he folded himself away. I thought at first it was grief. Then I thought it was simply the end of that kind of search, that some kings do not find their mate, that I was perhaps one of those. She was quiet for a long moment. In the firelight her face was angled away from me, and I could not read it. That seems like a very lonely thing to have decided, she said. It did not feel like a decision. It felt like an arrival. She looked at me then. Her eyes in the firelight were the color of deep water, not dark, but deep, with something in them that I had not named yet and was not sure I was allowed to name. Arrivals can be wrong, she said, the same as readings. The fire cracked. The gray wolf shifted in his sleep beyond the shelter's edge. I thought about what she had said for a long time after she slept. The 9th day. I was on the northern headland at first light, tending the signal fire, when I heard her below me at the tree line. She was moving wrong, not her usual careful, deliberate pace, but something faster, quieter, the way you move when you are choosing between 2 bad options. I came down from the headland, in time to see what she had been moving away from. 3 of them, the island's apex predators. the thing the old sailor's story had named, but that I had not let myself think too carefully about, because thinking carefully about them would not help and might slow the legs. They were large and low-slung and very old-looking, the way creatures look when they have been the thing at the top of a place for so long that nothing has ever taught them caution. They had come up from the southern rock pools in the night, and they had found our scent trail, and now they were between Senna and the shelter, and she was standing very still at the edge of the tree line with the healer's knife in her hand, which was not going to be enough. I felt my wolf surge. Not the slow, careful movement of the past 9 days, the watching and the turning. A surge, the full force of 3 years of silence suddenly given back, like a door blown open by a wind that had been building behind it. He came up and he filled me from the inside out, and I felt my hands change, and I stepped between Senna and the 3 creatures, and I let him have the field. I'm not going to describe what happened in detail. You have heard the stories of what an Alpha King's wolf can do when he is no longer quiet, and those stories are approximately accurate. What matters is this. The 3 creatures backed, and then they turned, and then they left, and I stood in the clearing with my breath coming hard and my hands changed back, and my wolf ringing inside me like a bell that has just been struck for the first time after a very long silence. And Senna was looking at me. She had not moved. She had not run. She stood at the edge of the tree line with the healer's knife still in her hand and her eyes very wide looking at me, and the expression on her face was not the one I expected. It was not fear. It was not even surprise exactly. It was the expression she had worn on the 7th morning when the gray wolf stood up and bore weight on his healed leg. Something that was not quite a smile but was in the same country. "I wondered," she said. "You wondered. Your bearing, your stillness, the way you took stock of the island that first morning, even through the pain, methodical, systematic, like a man used to assessing territories." She lowered the knife. "And your wolf, you kept him very quiet, but he is large. I could feel him occasionally, like a sound below the range of hearing." She could feel him, a healer's sensitivity perhaps, or something else. I was looking at her hands. The mark burned to my wrist without warning, not gradually, not building, but all at once, the way lightning falls. The mate bond's mark, the black and silver lines of the graving reaches faded mate seal, blazing to life across my left wrist in the middle of an island that had tried very hard to kill us both. I looked at it. I looked at her wrist. The same mark. Already there, already burning, her left wrist held up between us in the morning light, the black and silver lines identical to mine, the seal of the bond that cannot be faked and cannot be given to the wrong one. She stared at it. Her face did something complicated and quiet, the way her face did everything. "Senna," I said it the way you say a thing when you have not known you knew it until you hear your own voice saying it. The way a key sounds in a lock. "Senna Ray." She looked up at me. "You know my full name." "I know your full name." I had not known it until this moment, and I knew it completely, the bond's knowing, the way it gives you the other person's name in the moment it ignites, so you cannot pretend you have not felt it. "I know your full name, and I know that I have been on this island for 9 days with my fated mate, and I was too broken and too close to read it." Something moved across her face. The almost smile, but this time it went all the way, quiet and unguarded and entirely hers, the expression she had been keeping most of the way back behind her eyes for 9 days. "You weren't the only one who was reading it slowly," she said. The gray wolf, who had come down from somewhere in the trees during the chaos, and was now sitting 5 feet away watching us with the focused patience of an animal who has decided this is the correct outcome, tipped his head and made a sound that in a pack wolf I would have called satisfied. We were rescued on the 11th day. My first mate had survived. I had known he would. He was the kind of man who survives things by the force of being too practical to do otherwise. And he had organized the search from Graven's Harbor with the efficiency I had always valued in him. The rescue ship found our signal fire in the early afternoon of the 11th day, and we stood on the northern headland and watched it come in. And Senna watched it with the expression of someone who has not been sure, for quite a while, that this moment would happen. I stood beside her. Our wrists both marked were not quite touching, not quite. "What happens now?" she said. She did not say it like a woman who is afraid. She said it like a woman who is asking for a map so she can read it for herself. "We go home," I said. "To Graven." "That is not my home." "Not yet." She looked at me. "You move very fast for a man who spent 9 days not knowing I was his fated mate." "I spent 9 days knowing you," I said. "That is the part that matters. The rest is just the name for what I already knew." She was quiet for a moment. On the beach below, the gray wolf, who appeared to have made his own decision about where his future lay, was standing at the water's edge watching the rescue ship, his heeled leg bearing full weight, his tail moving slowly. "The council in Waysend," Senna said. "The ones who sent me to the elders, they're going to have opinions about this." "They are welcome to keep them," I said, "somewhere else." The almost smile, the full one. "You don't know what they'll say." "I know what I'll say, and I know what my wolf will say, which is considerably less patient than I am." I looked at the ship. "And I know what you did for 11 days on an island that tried to kill us, and what you did with your hands, and what you did for an injured wolf who had no claim on you and no reason to expect your help. I know what that is. I know what kind of person does that." She was quiet for a long time. The ship was close now. I could see my first mate's red coat at the prow. "Senna," I said, "you don't have to decide everything today. Come home with me, meet the Reach, see what it is, and when you know it well enough to decide, decide." She looked at me. Those deep-water eyes in the daylight were not dark at all. They were gray and green and lit from somewhere inside, and they held a quality I had been watching for 9 days without knowing what I was watching for. The quality of a person who will look at a thing honestly and then do the honest thing, regardless of what it costs. "All right," she said. "Yes." The gray wolf made the satisfied sound again. I thought, not for the first time, that he understood more than he was letting on. The Graven Reach opened itself to the sea on a gray morning 3 days later, the harbor sitting below the capital's stone halls like a hand cradling what it values most. Senna stood at the ship's rail as we came in, and she looked at it the way she looked at everything, taking in the harbor, the hall, the wolves on the dock, the flags of the Reach's bloodlines, the market stalls, the children running along the seawall. The full catalog kept behind her eyes. "It's larger than I expected," she said. "Most things are," I said, "when you've only heard them described." My first mate had sent word ahead. The Reach knew I was alive. Half the city was at the harbor. My council was there as well, 6 men and women who governed the Reach's affairs when I was away, 3 of whom had spent the past 11 days in various states of crisis management, and one of whom, Counselor Draith, who oversaw pack alliances and healer registries, had been very thorough in his opinion about where I had been found and by whom, and what that might mean for the Reach's political complexion. He was thorough in that opinion on the dock, where I could hear it. He was a careful man, Draith, a practical man. He had spent 30 years building a registry of the Reach's healers, their training, their lineage, their pack standing, their council ranks. He had opinions about training and lineage and council rank. He expressed them, concisely and with only minimal attempt to modulate his expression, while Senna stood beside me and did not blink. "A settlement healer," he said, the way you might say a classification that explains everything. "From Waysend, with no council rank, no hall training, no crossback credentials." "She has my life," I said. He paused. "She set my broken ribs on a beach," I said, "on an island that was trying to kill us both. She kept me alive for 9 days with a travel kit and a spring she found by walking the terrain herself. She healed a wild wolf with injuries that would have killed him by nightfall. She stood her ground when the southern creatures came out of the pools and did not run. I looked at him. Tell me what hall training produces that. He had the intelligence to be quiet. I turned to the dockside. The wolves of Graven were watching, the pack, the households, the harbor workers, the council families. All of them watching, the way wolves watch when something is happening that matters. This is Senna Ray, I said. I said it clearly, the way a declaration is said, not announced but stated, which is the more certain thing. Of Waysend Settlement, the Eastern Reach. She is a healer, and she has the bond mark of my fated mate, and she has earned more of my trust in 11 days than most have earned in decades. She will be welcomed in Graven's halls as she deserves to be welcomed. I looked at Draith, which is completely. No one spoke. Then slowly, the way things happen when the pack makes up its mind without being told, the wolves on the dock turned toward her, and the turn became a bow. Not elaborate, not theatrical, the simple, unmistakable bow of a pack acknowledging the person who is theirs. Senna, beside me, was still. She was looking at the people on the dock. Her face was doing the complicated, quiet thing it did when she was making a list and keeping the results to herself. Then she looked at me. You said when I knew the Reach well enough to decide, she said. I'd like to start learning it. Today, I said, if you like. Today, she agreed. The gray wolf, who had come off the ship so casually that no one had thought to question it, as if a wild northern wolf joining the Graven pack were an entirely expected development, sat down on the dock between us and the council, and looked at Draith with the patient, deliberate gaze of an animal who has decided things and found them satisfactory. Draith, to his credit, looked away first. There is a room in Graven's hall that was empty for 3 years. My healer's room, the one built beside the king's quarters for the Luna who was supposed to share it, outfitted with a workroom that I had kept locked, because the sight of the empty work table bothered me in a way I had not found the right word for. Senna found it on her 3rd day in the hall. She did not ask permission. She opened the door, walked in, looked around the workroom with the catalog expression, and came back out. The table faces the wrong wall, she said. I will have it moved. There's no proper light in the corner. I'll need a window if I'm going to do fine work. I'll have a window cut. She looked at me. The full smile, the one she had given me on the headland, moved across her face and stayed. You're very agreeable. I spent 3 years with a folded-away wolf in a hall that felt like an island, I said. I know what it costs to be without the right things. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, the Waysend Council is going to send a very stiff letter. My letter in reply, I said, will be stiffer. You haven't met Elder Carwick. Elder Carwick has not met me. She laughed. It was the first time I had heard her laugh, a real one, unguarded, bright as the headland light, and my wolf, who had not been quiet for a single moment since the morning in the clearing, lifted his head and made a sound of his own that I felt behind my ribs like warmth. The bond ceremony was held 1 month later, by the Reach's tradition, long enough that she had walked every wing of the hall, learned every council member by name and character, visited the harbor settlements and the inland packs, and told me on the evening before that she had decided. I asked what she had decided. She looked at me with those deep-water eyes, lit from inside, and said, that it is mine. If you'll have me for the rest of it. I had had 11 days to learn her before I knew what she was to me, and I had learned her well enough that when she said a thing, I believed it. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, the thing. A king who has ruled for 20 years and kept his wolf quiet for 3 of them, and his heart at arm's length for longer than that, is not easily given to belief. But Senna Ray on an island with no reason to be anything other than herself had been exactly herself for 11 days, and the self she had been was steady and precise, and without any layer between her hands and the work, and I had watched it and I had known it, and the bond had only been the name for what I already knew. For the rest of it, I said. Yes. The gray wolf had been given a name, by then, Ashkeep, for the obvious reason, and he sat at the door of the ceremony hall that evening with the air of a creature who had known all of this before any of us did, and found the pace at which we had arrived at it mildly exasperating. Draith had sent his letter of concern to Waysend on behalf of the council regarding settlement healer credentials. Elder Carwick had sent one back. I had written mine. The exchange had been, as promised, stiff in all directions, and it had concluded with Waysend's formal recognition that their healer was now the Luna of the Graving Reach, which they acknowledged in the careful language of people who are acknowledging something they had not accounted for. Senna had read all 3 letters and said nothing except, "You were right, Elder Carwick had not met you." There is a thing that happens when a fated bond finds its people against the odds, when it does not happen in a ceremony hall or a court presentation or a formal mate seeking, but in the stripped-down middle of danger with nothing between the 2 people but their own natures. The bond is the same. The mark is the same. The recognition is the same. But what you know of the other person when it happens is different. You know them without any of the dressing, without the title or the status, or the careful self-presentation that civilization layers over the self. You know what they do with their hands when no one is watching. You know how they move when they are afraid and choosing not to let the fear run them. You know what they save their words for, and what they choose to say in the dark when they are not being anything in particular. I knew Senna before I knew her name. I knew her hands and her silence and the way she made a list and kept it to herself, and the way the gray wolf watched her in the last of the afternoon light. I knew her before the bond told me what to call it. That is the thing I think about, now, when the hall is quiet and she is in the workroom with the window we cut into the eastern wall, and the table moved to catch the morning light, and Ashkeep is asleep across the doorway in the way of an animal who has decided this is his threshold and will not be moved. Not the bond. Not the ceremony, not Draith's letter or the Waysend Council's careful recognition. The thing I think about is the beach and the black sand, and the way she crouched beside me without asking my name and pressed her hands along my broken side, already making her list, already clear about what needed doing. The way she said, "I know, I'm sorry, I need 30 more seconds," and gave me exactly 30 more seconds and stopped. No one had ever apologized to me before. No one had ever given me 30 more seconds and then stopped. I had been a king for 20 years, and I had never known how much that mattered until a healer from a settlement at the edge of the reach showed me, on an island that neither of us was supposed to survive, what it looked like when a person treated you as if your pain was worth accounting for. I would not spend another second of my rule forgetting it. The workroom light came through the new window and fell across the table, and she moved in it, quick and precise and wholly herself. And Ashkeep lifted his head from the doorway and looked at me with the patient, decided expression he had been wearing since the morning on the beach when he chose to let her hands near him. I had been slow for a king. Slow to read what was in front of me, slow to stop bracing against what I had already decided could not come. She had been patient, the way she was patient with everything, waiting for it to be safe, waiting for the full 30 seconds, waiting until the creature in front of her decided to stop being afraid. We had both survived the island. That was the word for it. I thought survived, but it was not quite right. The island had not been the thing we survived. The island had only been the place where we arrived at each other without any dressing between us, and found that what was there was enough. More than enough. Everything, in fact.